Hello, everybody, and welcome. There's some people trickling into their room right now, so I'm just going to give this a few more seconds before I get started. But yeah, before I do, while in the interim, just some housekeeping, just by a show of hands, or you just tell me in the chat function, can you confirm that one, you can hear me, two, you can see me, and three, that you see this screen that says MAPP, MBA Advanced Access Program, information session. It's got a picture of our building as well as the Capitol building. Perfect. Thank you. So I got some information, so that's great. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Yes, so my name is Glenn. I work as the Associate Director of Operations on the MBA admissions team at Georgetown. I appreciate you joining us today. So we support our full-time Flex and Flex Online MBA programs. This includes MAPP, which is our deferred enrollment program into the full-time MBA program. I am our point of contact. Our office is point of contact for all MAPP applicants and incoming MAPP students. So I'll spend the next like 50-ish minutes or so on this presentation and save the last 10 minutes for any Q&A, for any questions. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter those into the Q&A box or the chat box, and I can address those at the end. Or if one catches my eye as I'm talking through a particular point that's relevant, I'll pause and address it there. So in terms of what I'm going to talk about today is one, I'm going to define what MAPP is, talk about the benefits of MAPP, and then I'll also talk through logistics of an incoming MAPP student's deferment period. I'll also go over an application workshop so you can understand the application requirements for a MAPP applicant. And then I'll just do a very brief general overview of the full-time MBA program. There we go. Cool. Okay, so first and foremost, what is MAPP? So MAPP stands for the MBA Advanced Access Program. It's our deferred enrollment program into our full-time MBA program here at Georgetown, which allows those who are in their final semester of their undergraduate or graduate degree who have not previously had professional full-time work experience to apply for deferred enrollment into the full-time MBA program at Georgetown. If you are admitted to the full-time MBA program via MAPP, you can defer your enrollment 2 to 4 academic years from the time that you're admitted. And the expectation is that you work full-time in that 2 to 4 year deferment period because those full-time work experiences are going to be very, very valuable for you, not only in the classroom and to participate in the MBA program, but also with your future job search, after, while you're in school, but for you to have a job lined up right after you graduate. It's worth noting that the full-time MBA program starts in August of each year, so there's no winter starts or spring semester starts. So pencil in August every single year. Sometimes it's like the very end of July, depending on how the calendar shakes out. But August of each year generally is when the full-time MBA program starts. So just as a recap, MAPP is really tailored for those with no full-time work experience and they're in their final year of their bachelor's degree, and they want to start an MBA program in 2 to 4 years from now, or they immediately pursued a master's degree right after they earned their bachelor's degree, and they're currently in their final year of their master's degree, and they want to start an MBA in 2 to 4 years from now. Again, the expectation is that you work full time during that 2 to 4 year deferment period, because it's important for class participation. It helps, you'll need your work experiences to apply into group projects. So without that work experience, we'd be setting up, students for failure if they didn't have those work experiences. And like I mentioned, the work experience will better position them for career opportunities post MBA. All right. So in terms of a timeline, so assuming that you're eligible to apply via MAPP, this admission cycle, you may apply in our final round, which is round 3. I'll show some dates, some application deadline related dates in a future slide, but we do rounds of admission as opposed to rolling admissions. Our round 3 application deadline is April 2nd. And like I said, I'll show the dates on another slide. So just to give you an example of what your logistically what your journey could look like in terms of timing. So you submit your MAPP application by April 2nd of this year. Um, and then for um, the majority of you will earn your bachelor's or master's degree by mid to late May. In late May, you'll receive your application decision. We only provide admit or deny decisions for MAPP applicants, so there's no wait list for MAPP. Let's say, for example, you're denied. That's not necessarily a negative thing. I don't want to, say that. But we welcome you to reapply normally in a future year. Unfortunately, you can't reapply to MAPP and for deferred enrollment. So in this case, we'd recommend that you reapply as early as 2 years from that time that you applied to MAPP. Gain a few years of work experience at least, and then reapply to the full-time MBA program normally, not through MAPP. But let's say you're admitted to the program and the current admission cycle. So you would have to submit a $500 deposit, which would be due in June, which would temporarily hold your spot in a future MBA class. Then each year that you defer, you'd be required to submit a deposit to continue holding your spot in the MBA program. So expect to pay deposit, in some cases 2 deposits, which I'll explain in a second, each year that you defer. And every single deposit that you submit is credited to your first tuition bill. So you can think of this as paying some of your tuition in advance. So if you're applying now, you could begin the program as early as August 2027 and as late as August 2029. Again, the expectation is that you'd be working full-time before you start the program. All right, so a lot of dates here. For MAPP, really, you only need to focus on 3 key dates, and it's April 2nd, which is the round 3 application deadline, May 14th, which is the decision notification date for round 3, and then your first deposit deadline, which would be June 10th. You can completely ignore July 10th. The second deposit deadline here, this is relevant for applicants applying to the full-time MBA program regularly. But yeah, there's really these 3 dates: April 2nd, May 14th, and June 10th are really the only ones you need to focus on. So let's say you apply on April 2nd or before, you will get a decision on your application on May 14th, no sooner, no later. And then let's say you're admitted to the program. That $500 deposit would be due on June 10th. And in the year that you plan to matriculate, you would have to submit 2 $2,000 deposits. So I'm going to give you an example of what this could look like. Unfortunately, I don't have a slide for it. But let's say you're admitted on May 14th, 2025, and you plan to start the MBA program in 2 years, so fall 2027. You'd pay a $500 deposit on June 10th, and then another $500 deposit in 2026. The date for that is not set yet, but you'd likely follow the round 1 dates of what we have this year. So realistically, you'd have a $500 deposit due in February 2026. So we're at $1,000 total so far, 2 $500 deposits. And then in the year that you plan to matriculate, 2027, you'd have 2 $2,000 deposits, so $4,000 total. That'd be due in 2027. You'd likely follow the round 1 dates here. And you'd expect to have a $2,000 deposit due in February and then another $2,000 deposit due in April. So in total, you're looking at $5,000 worth of deposits paid in 4 different installments, and all of that money is credited to your first tuition bill. So that's how that would generally look like in terms of deposit payments and securing your spot in the MBA program. Okay, so why apply to MAPP in the first place? Why not, just wait, 4, 5 years from now or however long? For starters, it certainly eases the stress of trying to find that right job right after graduation. Right after graduating from your bachelor's degree or master's degree, I was certainly in that boat where when I was in my final year of school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I was unaware of these, deferred enrollment programs, so I didn't know anything about this, nor did I think they really existed all that much at the time I graduated my bachelor's degree. But that's another conversation. So you may discover that the industry and or function that you start your career in isn't for you, and that's fine. And with an MBA, you could pivot or completely change your career path. So, for example, you could start your career out as a software developer, right, for a tech company, but you want to be a product manager for a tech company where you're more like in a strategic role where you're actually creating a product from start to finish, every step between ideation to putting it out on the market. You might also discover that you actually enjoy the industry and function that you're currently in, but an MBA is necessary to advance and enhance your career. So, for example, you could be working in a financial services role, but have no direct reports, but you want to lead large teams, and you want direct reports, and you want to stay within your industry and your functional role. But you just want to advance to a managerial position. That's where an MBA can come into play, and really support you. Um, on top of that, uh, you're competing against a much smaller applicant pool, so it's less competitive applying via MAPP. So you think of it this way. You're only getting evaluated amongst MAPP applicants rather than the entire applicant pool. Um, so you think of it this way. If you're applying to MAPP right now, like this admission cycle, you wouldn't be starting the full-time MBA program until August 2027 at the very earliest. All other full-time MBA applicants are applying to graduate in the spring of 2027. So the vast majority of people that are applying now, you wouldn't be overlapping with in when you would start the program at the very earliest. So all that being said, you are only being assessed amongst the MAPP applicant pool as opposed to the greater full-time MBA applicant pool. All right, so into application components as well as the holistic approach that our admissions committee, including myself, takes when we review applications. And I'll talk about the benefits and logistics of MAPP and whatnot, and just applying through this process. But so you might be wondering, like, how do you apply? So let me send a link to everyone so you have it. So give me 1 second. Okay. Very long URL, but I just put in the chat a link to our application portal. So this is where you would apply, just so you know where to go. But this is hyperlinked all over our website and whatnot. But I just want to make sure that everyone has it. But yeah, so what you see on my screen are just major application components, but they're, with the exception of an interview, and I'll cover that in a second, but I'm going to talk through all of these components in more detail in a few slides, but full details on all these requirements are in our application itself as well as our website. But I'll try to talk through some nuances. But yeah, and in a greater picture, in terms of the holistic approach that we take, myself and the admissions committee take, is that, well, first of all, I'll note that that's not the answer that people want to hear when they say, well, how do you evaluate applications? Then you say holistically. Well, that's like kind of a cop-out answer. Like, tell me how you actually review applications. I'm like, no, seriously, it is actually a very holistic review. So let me explain. The thing is that every applicant they're coming from a variety of different backgrounds. So it's hard to make apples and apples comparisons with some applicants. And we're never looking at applicants side by side to see, okay, we can admit one and not the other. How are we going to go about this? So it doesn't work that way. We understand that applicants come from a variety of different backgrounds. For example, different undergraduate institutions, different majors, different internship experiences, different parts of the world where the education system is just different. So we understand that every applicant has a unique story and background that can contribute positively to their future career in the MBA program. Because big things we want to understand is that, does an MBA make sense for your career goals? Does an MBA at Georgetown, is it a good fit in terms of where we can place you in a future career? And will your experiences contribute positively to the MBA experience, both within the classroom, extracurriculars, career activities, the list goes on. And in terms of any particular component that I'll be talking through, there's no specific weightage that we have. So it's not like how some classes are graded, like 25% of the classes, is graded by quizzes. The other 50 is by tests. The other 25% is for projects. Doesn't work that way. So there's no specific weightage or percentage for any component that we review. But we try to break these down into the quantitative and qualitative measures, and I'll break those down for you. Okay. So first we'll talk about qualitative measures, so things you can't quite quantify. For starters, we require 2 recommendations to be submitted for every MAPP applicant. One from someone in a professional setting, so ideally like an internship manager, just to give you an example. And then another recommendation from an academic setting. So ideally, professor. So someone who has taught you, so we can understand how you are, how you are as a student, how you interact in the classroom. From someone else's perspective, we want to get a better understanding of your performance, both professionally and in an academic setting, which is why we require 1 professional, 1 academic recommendation. And then when choosing who you want to be your recommender, there's no need to fixate on their job title. We want you to use your best judgment on who can speak the best about you, and the best, one in a professional setting and the other in an academic setting. And then once you've chosen your recommender, or recommenders, excuse me, operationally, how this would work is that when you complete the recommendation section of the application, a recommendation form is going to get emailed directly to your recommenders. Both of your recommenders would have to complete and submit that form to complete the recommendation requirement for you. That form consists of multiple choice questions, as well as questions that require open-ended responses. We understand that some recommenders prefer to submit a formal letter, which is fine, but they would still need to complete and submit your recommendation form to fulfill that requirement for you. So a letter can be attached to the bottom of the recommendation form, but all required fields of that form must be filled out in order for that form to be submitted. And like, let's just say, for example, there's a question on that form that is clearly answered in your recommender's letter. You can tell your recommender, just type in C attachment or C letter, and that's perfectly fine. Myself and the admissions committee will know to go directly to the attachment or the letter, to review, how they would have answered that question. Another requirement is that we have a written essay. It's like a 500-word maximum. We give you 3 essay prompts to answer. You just need to choose 1 answer or 1 prompt to answer. The topics are really the essay prompts are quite long, so they're not on the screen, but the titles are there. And the long and the short of it is that the prompts really center around how you can contribute to the Georgetown community based on your experiences from the past, whether that's personal, professional experiences, educational experiences, and the list goes on. And we want to make sure that your experiences could translate well to an MBA program in general, and of course to Georgetown specifically. Another requirement that we have is a video essay. It is just 1 minute long, and I put the prompt here on the screen. So it's really just meant to share something personal about yourself, and it is doesn't necessarily have to be work or school related. If something that you enjoy is work or school related, absolutely go for it and share about it. But ultimately, we want to learn something new about you, because that really helps us understand you better as a person. And also this component is very reflective of what the MBA program is all about. And we want to ensure there's a sense of balance. Yes, you're going to an MBA program to do well in the classroom, go to class, get good grades, also to get a job. That's all part of the experience, but there's more to the MBA experience than just that. It's about personal growth as well. For example, we have a lot of different extracurricular activities through like club involvement that really center around things like mental health, that center around things like, just improving your communication skills, whether that's in a formal setting, like a presentation, or your general interpersonal skills when you're interacting with students. So the video essay is kind of reflective of that. And we want to make sure that there's a sense of balance in the program where you're not completely overwhelmed with all things career and all things academics. And there's more to the experience than just that. And then last thing I'll mention about the video essay in terms of production value, you're not getting assessed on that at all. Really, the main things is that we want to be able to see you and hear you, and there's no distractions like audio distractions or any visuals in the background that might be distracting, like people walking by or whatever the case may be. So you do not need to feel the need to hire a film crew to do. I've seen it happen. It's very rare, but it happens. We love that, those people went the extra mile, but it's really not necessary. You could simply literally do what I'm doing right now, is have a computer in front of you. You talk to a screen with a neutral background talk for 1 minute and that's perfectly fine. But sometimes, props can, like a cookbook, if you love cooking or whatever, like showing that, could add a little color to your video and some life to it. Again, not required. Really, we're more concerned about, being able to hear you and see you and learning something new about you. There's also some short essays that are required. The MAPP essays that you see on the bottom right. I would more so call these short answer responses. So don't be expected to like submit some Word document with some long-winded answer. Ultimately, these are just questions to get a better understanding of your plan as a MAPP, your plans as a MAPP applicant in terms of your career and things like that. And then last thing is an interview. So not all applicants will interview. It's done on an invite basis only. And if you're invited, you only need to interview once. The interviews are 30 minutes long, and you could be interviewing with a current or former MBA staff member, an alumni of the program, or a current student. The mode of interviews are either virtual or on campus in person. We do not have a preference over which mode that you choose. We understand that everyone has different work schedules, school schedules, you're located in different places, so it's not seen negatively if you can't interview in person, even if you're located in the DC area. But if you want to come to campus, by all means, you're welcome, and we'd love to have you. All right. So that was qualitative measures. Now this is more the quantitative measures, so the things that we can actually, throw numbers to. So the stats that you see on the right are from our most recent MAPP class. So those who were admitted in May of 2024. It is worth noting, yeah, the average, for example, the GMAT is the average is high. A couple things to note. One, it's a pretty wide range in terms of the scores that we receive. I mean, we receive anything from like anything in the low 600s to like 770, which is crazy. That's really high. But I do want to send everyone a link to help decipher the GMAT statistics. So give me 1 second. And I might actually just show this on my screen too, for the sake of the presentation. So I think you all can see this, but in short, the GMAT went through a change in terms of formatting for like a different test section, different questions, all to a point where they changed the name of the GMAT and it has different scoring. So the average that you saw on my screen was from the old version of the GMAT, which is this blue highlighted stuff. So like a 735 is like somewhere like around here. No one can take this version of the test anymore. Everyone will be taking the GMAT exam focused edition, and those what these scores are here. This is public knowledge or public information that GMAC provides online and something that schools like MBA admissions offices like ours rely on to interpret the new GMAT scores. So let's say, for example, you got a 585 on the, you took the GMAT tomorrow and you got a 585. That is equivalent to somewhere between a 620 and a 640 on the old GMAT, and that will help us review your test scores. So I think this is something that our office, as well as other admissions offices, are going to rely on for the next couple of years, because we're in a awkward transition where across the MBA market, not just at Georgetown, where we get old GMAT scores as well as new GMAT scores. So we'll be relying on this for the future. And this is subject to change too. So I know that this is a dynamic link where these scores may change, but generally, I just want to make sure that you have this information so you can better prepare. Yes, so in terms of what we require, so in terms of tests, so we require a GMAT or GRE from every MAPP applicant. You can take one test or the other. We do not have a preference over which test someone takes. Unfortunately, we do not have test waivers for MAPP applicants, so you are required to submit a GMAT or a GRE. And yeah, that's essentially it. This is definitely a component of the application that gives a lot of applicants anxiety, which is understandable. It's probably one of the biggest commitments in terms of time and resources to prepare for. But keep in mind, it is one component of many. Reason why we look for things like a like a test score as well as transcripts, which I'll share in a second, is that we want to make sure that we're setting up applicants for success academically. So if we don't have, for lack of a better term, positive, academic indicators or evidence that that a student or an applicant would be able to fare well with the MBA curriculum. We want to make sure that they can, because we don't want to set up an applicant for failure. That's not good for it's not good for the applicant who then becomes a future student. It's not good for their academic advisor. It's not good on professors. It's not good for the whole experience. So that's why these requirements are in place. And then in terms of your academic history, so we require your transcripts and grade scales from all of your undergraduate level education and beyond. We don't need to see high school transcripts. So like if you got AP courses that transferred into your school, we don't need to see transcripts for that. But we do require transcripts and grade scales from transfer credits earned during undergrad and beyond. So like, let's say you started your first year of school at a community college, or you studied abroad. For a semester. Ultimately, we need to see your letter grades in each class you have taken in undergrad and beyond. So if you've taken a master's degree or something, because we want to understand how you performed rather than just seeing that you pass classes. We often see that with like study abroad. It's often a missing component for MBA applicants. If they study abroad, they say, "Oh, well, my study abroad transcripts classes are on my undergraduate transcript. What's the problem?" Well, you may have taken, 6, 7 classes, right? And it might just show that you passed the class, which is great, but there's zero indication as to how you performed. Did you get C minuses just to pass, or did you get straight A's? Ultimately, seeing your grades could really help the applicant in terms of their candidacy. So that's why that requirement is there. In the MBA application, to help you understand which transcripts and grade skills you need to submit, we do have what's called an educational background questionnaire. It's a required question, basically details whether you need to submit transfer credit transcripts or not. And that can be particularly nuanced, as every school shows transfer credit classes and grades differently on their transcripts. But the questionnaire will just clarify what you need to submit. That includes like master's level transcripts and grade scales if you are currently in a master's program. And in terms of when we are reviewing transcripts, we take your final GPA into account, but we certainly review beyond it, because we understand that we review things like academic progression, trends, specific math-based classes that would translate well to the MBA program. And the reason for that is that we understand that a transcript isn't going to tell the whole story. Yes, it shows what your grades are, but there might be some context that we're unaware of. So what I'm about to share in terms of an optional essay is relevant not only to just, academic performances, but anything that you are unable to explain in the application that deserves additional context. So, for example, it's perfectly okay and common to see optional essays where someone has, a below a 3.0 GPA, and there is a clear, like, 3 straight semesters where they performed really poorly. That optional essay might explain, I was dealing with a family emergency where we were in financial constraints and I had to work full time while I was in school, taking full-time classes. Like, we want to understand that context if there's like a clear like negative trend in your grades. And that's perfectly okay. Everyone has a different scenario, different circumstances, and we try to be as understanding as possible with that. So yes, your final GPA is important, but we certainly look beyond it. Okay. And in terms of a resume, so we want to understand what your part-time work experiences have been so far, as well as any internships you may have had. Try to keep your resume to 1 page. I really would suggest not being up to 2 pages, but try to keep it to 1. Try to quantify any accomplishments that you can. Like I mentioned, include internship experiences, part-time work experiences, even volunteering experiences if you've had them. Ideally from undergrad, only from undergrad, nothing from high school and prior. But if you feel that you have any work experiences from high school and prior that are like If you feel that they're very relevant to the MBA experience, go ahead and add them to your resume. But generally, we're just looking for anything that you've done in undergrad and beyond. Um, some important advice regarding your resume is that ensure that it is understandable for a neutral audience. So let me explain. So your resume is going to be looked at by multiple people with different backgrounds when it's reviewed. So for example, I'm a higher education professional and I may reference your resume when I'm just doing a full evaluation of your application. But let's say you get interviewed. You could be interviewing with a current student that has an engineering background. So with that being said, like we have totally different industry jargon that we use. We understand different acronyms and things like that. So when you are putting together your resume, try, avoid using industry jargon and acronyms. Um, also include like a brief description of what your organization does, especially if it's like a small organization where it's not intuitive in the organization's name as to what the organization actually does. So I've reviewed so many resumes where an applicant lists the accomplishments and duties that they've done, but it's incredibly unclear what that organization actually does. So I've seen, duties and responsibilities that clearly show that this person is in a sales role, but it's unclear what they sell. So like adding a brief description of or a brief sentence of what the organization does goes a very, very long way. It could be a matter of like 2 words. So like, let's say you work for XYZ Incorporated, and that description literally says steel manufacturer. Now I know what you sell. Sometimes that steel manufacturer, description I just shared is not on there and I have no idea what they're selling. And some places are easier to find on Google than others, organizations. So all that being said, make sure your resume is neutral for understandable for a neutral audience. And if you're just looking for a tip on like how to go about that, put together your resume, get a friend or a family member who has a completely different academic or internship background as you. Ask them to review it and ask them if they understand what you've done and what your organization does. And that should give you a good sense of whether your resume is understandable for a neutral audience or not. All right, so that's it for the application. So I'm going to do an overview of the full-time MBA program. So first and foremost, return on investment. One of the great, a lot like very consistent feedback that we get from employers is that our graduates are career ready. So in 2019 and 2021 by Bloomberg Businessweek, we were rated #1 best trained graduates. And that's a tip in the cap to our career center, as well as our professors for really getting our students, career ready, and they're ready to hit the ground running when they start their new jobs, which helps not only them to perform, but also to bring these employers back to Georgetown. We have plenty of employers that are regularly hiring Georgetown MBAs, and this is a reason why as to why they keep coming back to hire our MBA graduates. It's because one of those reasons is that they're career ready when they start. So, and then the average signing bonuses and average salaries for our class that graduated in 2024 are on the screen there. And why Georgetown? So if anyone asks, why should I apply to Georgetown, or could you explain what Georgetown McDonough is? I realize I haven't mentioned McDonough, so we're the McDonough School of Business. So I just want to put that out there. So if I ever say Georgetown or McDonough, I'm using it interchangeably, so I apologize in advance. So anyways, to describe Georgetown in the Georgetown McDonough in as a concise manner as possible is we break it down into 3 different pillars. One is our global mindset. One is the others are our location in Washington, D.C., and also a mindset of principled leadership. So in terms of a global mindset, we're a very globally focused program. For example, with the student body, we have, I think, over 50 countries represented in the program right now. Beyond that, we have a very globally focused curriculum. For example, we have a required consulting project called the Global Business Experience, which I'll talk about in a second, or in a future slide. We also have pro bono consulting opportunities abroad, which is really, really cool. I'm kind of just scratching the surface there. I want to be mindful of time, but ultimately the world is more connected than it's ever been and will continue to be. And it's important that our students are career ready to go into a globally connected workforce, really. So there's a lot of experiences that are embedded in the curriculum and as well as the extracurricular activities and the student body, of course, that will prepare students for that. Second thing is our location in Washington, D.C. So just from a pure practicality standpoint, just our proximity to employers is a massive advantage. Employers are able to come to our building to recruit, network, and interview our applicants. I mean, we have plenty of, existing recurring, relationships with employers like Deloitte, Nestle, Bank of America, JP Morgan, EY, the Amazon, the list goes on. And they're able to come to our building rather than you having to go to them, so rather than, going to class all day and then maybe catching a flight to go to an interview, all that could be done in our building, all within the same day, which is great. Beyond that, beyond all things career, there's a lot of opportunities for experiential learning. So let's say you want to work in startups. DC is a startup hub, and there are plenty of startups that are looking for help from MBA students. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to work outside of the classroom and work with real life clients to gain better experiences that will set you up for your career. And then last thing I'll mention is principled leadership. The long and the short of it is that embedded throughout the culture of the program, we always strive to do things with an ethical lens. So from a business perspective, we understand that profit is important, of course, but there's instances where you have to make decisions and really look beyond that bottom line, and you have to consider things like labor laws, environmental concerns. What's the right human thing to do? And that's something that's embedded in the culture of the entire program. Everything from the curriculum that's taught, the discussions that are facilitated, even the decisions that my office makes. We have that mindset as well, and that's a big part of the culture of the program. And but yeah, moving on. This is just some pictures from our campus. On the left is a view, probably from a roof from one of our buildings, but you can see the Washington Monument from our campus, which is very, very cool. The building here in the middle is the Rafiq B. Hariri building. So this is the McDonough School of Business. And every business class will be held in this building. There's some exceptions where you can take some classes outside of the School of Business, but by and large, all of your activities, both classroom, extracurriculars, et cetera, would be in this building. And so all things global. So building on what I mentioned about global business experience, one of the big highlights of the MBA program is the required consulting project. It's we call it GBE for short. So essentially how it works, it's your capstone course. It's the final course that you take, and it encompasses everything that you've learned in the MBA program so far. You are in a group of probably 5 or 6 different MBA students, depending on how the numbers shake out. And you have a real life client at the start of that you get them at the beginning of the semester, of the final semester of the program. And that client is not based in the US, and they have a real life project or problem they want to help you solve. So you work on that project throughout the entirety of the semester, and then about halfway through, around spring break, you will travel to that client site and you will present your findings and meet with the client face to face for about a week. And then from there, you'll get some recommendations in terms of how, what direction to move the project in, or problem that you're trying to solve. And then you finish the rest of the project on campus. But you're really meeting. You're meeting with the client pretty regularly over email, Zoom, et cetera. And then you meet with them in person for about a week, about halfway through, which is really, really great, real life experience. So I think it's a microcosm of the amount of practical learning that you get in the MBA program, as opposed to just sitting in a classroom and learning from a professor. There's going to be a certain element of that with any MBA program that you go to, but But especially here, there's a lot of hands-on opportunities, and this one's required, where you work hands-on with real life clients, which is awesome. But just to give you a very brief example of what a project could look like, they're certainly going to differ in terms of location and project because one client one year might need MBA help, and then the next year, or our MBA students solve their problem, and we're not needed the final year, the following year. So ultimately these clients and projects will change over time. But I actually had a coworker that was in our part-time program, and they were required to do the same exact project. And his project was their client was Anheuser-Busch and based in their Shanghai office. And essentially, Anheuser-Busch wanted to expand their craft brewing business in mainland China. And that's something that, for whatever reason, Anheuser-Busch didn't really capitalize on in the US. And they wanted to see what may have worked in the US that could translate to mainland China in terms of supply chain related supply chain related needs, marketing strategies, things like that. So it's a very all like it's a well-rounded project where you're not necessarily going to focus on one particular business area. It's going to cover a lot of different business angles. So it's a really cool project. You had a great experience going there. And then alumni, very global alumni base. Main thing I want to highlight here is just the general culture of alumni and how supportive they are with our MBA students. So a little bit of context, you will work really closely with our career center in terms of getting a job. The coworker I was just talking about, yes, he worked with our career center to help, get a job after he graduated. But ultimately, the job he got was actually through an alumni of the program, and that's relatively common. And it's great. Our alumni are very, very supportive. General culture is that don't be shy to reach out to people on LinkedIn, shooting them an email. Generally, Georgetown MBA grads are very, very supportive and receptive to helping out current MBA students in terms of all things career. And diverse community. So this is building off of what I mentioned about our student body, which is comprised of 50 plus different countries. But we have people from everywhere, from different parts of the US, from different parts of the world, people coming from a lot of different industry backgrounds. And a big part of the MBA experience is not just learning from your professor in a classroom, but interacting with your fellow classmates, because there's a lot you can learn from, I'm a higher education professional. I could be in a class with someone from from South Africa that has an engineering background. They could have a completely different outlook in terms of how to approach a business problem than I do. Doesn't make either of us better or worse or anything like that, but we can learn from one another. And that's the general culture of the program, and something that it is a huge benefit for all of our students. So it's something that we really lean on, and something that's really beneficial for everybody. And just to give you a general sense of what the curriculum looks like. So I'm not going to go into this in a crazy amount of detail, but this is what a general full-time MBA curriculum would look like. The green squares and rectangles are all of your core curriculum. So those are required courses. This includes the Global Business Experience, which is in your final semester. These blue boxes and rectangles are elective courses. So this is where you can customize your experience and take a wide breadth of classes, or if you want to focus on all marketing classes, you could do that, for example. These purple ILEs they stand for intensive learning experiences. These are purely optional. And there's more opportunities to take them beyond this spring semester of your first year. And they are essentially accelerated ways to earn an elective credit. So rather than taking an elective over half of a semester, you could take an ILE over the course of like 4 days and earn it. So it's an intense 4 days where you're going to be in class and doing work outside of class basically all day long for 4 days. But it's a different mode in terms of how you can earn elective credits. But as you can see, just based on the color scheme, the majority of your first year is going to be all core curriculum, and then the majority of your second year is going to be all electives. So that's just a general breakdown of what that looks like. I will also point out that you're probably wondering what this is, this year one, these two classes, LTPI, Leading Teams for Performance and Impact, and then SGI, Structure of Global Industries. These are the two very first classes that every MBA student is going to take. It occurs essentially the entire month of August. And it's what we call opening term. So it's probably the most intense period, academic period for the MBA program. And that's all done by design. That's also nature of most people coming into the program are coming from working full time as opposed to being in school and being in school mode. So it's kind of a shock to the system in terms of getting you back into a school mindset. But ultimately, it's fundamental to your success with the rest of the program, and everyone gets through it. But it's just one of the more intense periods of academic periods of the program. So once you get through that, you're going to be fine for the rest of the curriculum. But yeah, so you only have to do opening term once. That's the August, basically the whole month of August for your first year. And then the fall semester starts like right around Labor Day every single year. We do have some study abroad opportunities as well as dual degree opportunities. These are relatively niche. So if you have any specific questions about these, feel free to enter those into the chat function or Q&A, and I'm happy to address those. These make up a very small percentage of our students that take advantage of these. But a large amount of our students do take advantage of working with our centers and initiatives. For example, Steers Real Estate or Entrepreneurship Initiative. Essentially, these are offices within the School of Business that are there to help you with not only your MBA experience, but all things in your career development, and not just your career development, but also like trying to help you get a job. So I'll use a very quick example with like our entrepreneurship initiative. Let's say you want to work in venture capital. We have a venture fellows program where you can it's a year long where you basically have an internship with a venture capital firm, and it's all facilitated by our entrepreneurship initiative, and it gains you practical VC venture capital experience. And beyond that, like it could lead to full-time employment. So I'm kind of scratching the surface there. That's just one example, but for the sake of time, I can elaborate further if you have any questions about it if you had it in the Q&A. And then Career Center, I'll kind of breeze through this, but the big thing I want to highlight here is that our Career Center is there with you every step of the way in terms of all things career, and they will actually start working with you prior to you starting classes. So I mentioned that the program starts in August of each year, but you will actually have interactions with our Career Center either in the months of June, July, or both. They want to make sure that you are career ready before you start opening term, which I mentioned before is one of the more intense academic periods of the MBA program. So in terms of being career ready, they'll do things like ensuring that they'll work directly with you to ensure that your resume is ready. They'll also do things like host webinars on particular industries. So let's say, for example, you're undecided whether to go, work in consulting or work in healthcare. You'd attend both of those webinars just so you get it's meant to be a general overview of what the job market is like, what employers are looking for, understanding what employers have historically hired Georgetown MBA graduates or MBA students, and the list goes on. But yeah, the point is that they make sure that you're career ready. So once opening term is over and all recruiting events start, you're just ready to go. So it's a big perk of just being a Georgetown MBA student is that our Career Center is supporting you even before you start the MBA program, and they're going to be with you throughout the entirety of the program. And yeah, personalized job search coaching, or just personalized coaching in general. Part of what you do in the months of June and July is to meet with a Career Center coach or advisor. They have industry focuses. So for example, if you wanted to go into social impact, nonprofit work, we have a coach specific for that has experience in that industry that will be able to talk you through Well, first of all, understand your work background so far, your goals with an MBA, et cetera. And then from there, kind of create a roadmap for what your recruiting journey will look like. So, for example, connecting you with particular alumni that might be able to support you throughout this process. Understanding what clubs to join. Student clubs are a big part of the MBA experience. Um, Understanding what events might be in the future that might be beneficial for you, and the list goes on. So it's meant to be a very personalized, tailored approach when you meet with our career center coaches and advisors. And this is just an example of possibilities of, or one example of, an MBA student that went through a pretty big career pivot going from, finance to consulting, and the different opportunities that they leverage to get there. But all that being said, there's a lot of different possibilities with the MBA, which is a big perk about the MBA degree in general. And this is just one example of that. And these are the MBA coaching, MBA Career Center coaching numbers. So in terms of how many events they hosted, the amount of interviews that they had. So for example, they facilitate employers coming to our building to interview our MBA students for both internships and full-time positions. These numbers are from the 2022-2023 uh, 2022-2023 academic year. So I realize these are a little out of date, but by and large, these numbers are honestly, they're probably higher now. I just don't have the updated numbers from them at the moment. But by and large, year over year, this is pretty typical. And quite frankly, I'm pretty sure these have increased over time. All right. So I paused there. I went a few minutes over, but I'm happy to address any questions that you have. I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you joining. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to enter those into the Q&A or chat, and then I will answer them. But for now, I need a quick sip of water. Been talking for a while, and yeah, I'll get to your questions. Okay. Do you accept the executive assessment over the GMAT or GRE? So I'll recap the test score requirements. So we require or MAPP applicants to submit a GMAT or a GRE. We unfortunately we do accept the executive assessment for regular full-time MBA applicants, but not for MAPP. I won't go through all the nuances of it, but essentially the executive assessment is more so for it's a test tailored for professionals that have like 8+ years of work experience, where it doesn't really require as much preparation to take compared to the GMAT or GRE. You should absolutely prepare to take the executive assessment if you're going to take it. But all I'm saying is that the GMAT and GRE is a bit more an investment of the time. It's a bit more all-encompassing in terms of it doesn't quite matter in terms of how much years of work experience you have to take the GMAT or GRE. So ultimately, we require GMAT or GRE from MAPP applicants. You can take one or the other. Take the test that you feel most comfortable taking. And what was the last thing I was going to mention? Oh yeah, and unfortunately, we don't have test waivers for MAPP applicants. Every MAPP applicant would be required to submit one test or the other. But good question. Can you share a little information about scholarship opportunities? Yes. So let me actually back up a few slides just so we can put some timeline to this. Give me 1 second. Okay. So let's say that you are admitted on May 2025. That's great. Anyone that's initially admitted to MAPP we don't consider scholarships at this stage of the admission cycle. When we review an applicant for scholarship is the year leading up to their matriculation. So let's say, for example, you have indicated that you plan to enroll in August 2028. So during that admission cycle, we would review you you've already been admitted, so we're not reviewing you for admittance anymore. We would re-review you for scholarship. And the big reason for that and why we don't offer scholarships in in the deferment period as well as when a MAPP applicant is initially admitted. One is that we have no idea what your work experience is going to look like. Well, we have a general sense, but like there's no way of really knowing until you actually go through it. And that's a big consideration when it comes to scholarship decisions. Another thing is that we want to make sure that scholarships, I also should mention that scholarships are all merit-based. So they're based on your work experiences, test scores, undergraduate performance, master's degree performance, if you've taken a master's degree, how your interview went, things like that. So anyways, um, we want to ensure that we have the most recent up-to-date version of you before we review you for scholarship. So in the years that you defer and whatnot, we're going to ask for updates to your application, primarily an updated resume, just to get a check on in terms of how your work experience has been so far, and we can better understand how you've been doing professionally. So like I mentioned, if you indicate that you're gonna start in August of 2028, in the fall 2028 admission cycle, that's when we review you for scholarship. And again, there'll be opportunities to for you to submit updates, and that's all facilitated by our office, so nothing to worry about now. Um, on top of that, we have no idea what our scholarship budget's going to look like in 2028 versus now, so we don't want to offer scholarship money that we don't know if it exists or not. So that's also a large consideration too. But good question. All right, so I think that is it. I'll pause for like 20 more seconds. But if there are no other questions, then I will we can end the webinar. Okay, great. So I will just end it there. There are no other questions. So thank you very much for taking the time um, to listen. And I know there's a lot of information, um, and it could be a bit information overload, but you have plenty of time between now and April 2nd, 2025, to apply. So there's plenty more time to do research on the program. There's plenty more time to prepare application components, etc. But yeah, thank you again for joining, and hope to see you apply in April. Good day. Thank you.